back at it. It's Mike Lane and Jim Beebe. I'm here in the library. Mike's on site, Eastern Kentucky University, home of the Colonels. We were just talking about that. So, subject matter expert brought on a guy. He's a professor at the school, deals a lot with getting kids better and ready to graduate, but also works in the tactical world. And so, we're going to get into that here in a minute. But we just had the home run derby last night for baseball. And if I'm putting you in the baseball world, would you rather win a gold glove or the Cy Young or be the home run winner or which, what would you prefer there?
Oh man, now we're going back to. It sounds odd, and and let's start off with dating ourselves. Always a big Tony Gwynn fan. Always like the guys hitting for on base percentage. Brett, and obviously you can go back, to the last humans to really hit over 400. So
Yeah.
I always was a guy, even though I'd like to think of myself as strong, that was a guy that was more of a contact on base hitter. So like the idea of being like the Golden Glove, to me, I mean obviously we're talking defense, but that would probably be more where I was, and both because of A, how mediocre my throwing arm is, and B, my control of the ball. The idea of having a Cy Young, even though being left-handed, is just like, yeah, yeah, be the utility guy. Be the guy that, the ball never gets by.
One of the, I read the stories about like the greats like Greg Maddux and Tony Gwynn and what it's like when they go against each other. And I don't have that data in front of me, but they're both legends and they're, outstanding. One of the stories about Tony that I knew of is that he was usually late to family events and any kind of gathering because he knew all around town, wherever he was, where all the batting cages were. So he was always going to batting cages to get more reps. And everywhere he went, a guy might bring a wallet and his keys, now his phone. He always had batting gloves in his back pocket because no matter where he went, you want to make sure he had batting gloves in case he wanted to hit some extra balls. And he was always working on his swing, his mechanics, going the other way, going with the pitch. It was a true, elite level master of his craft. So
Yeah.
I love that discipline. So we just had the baseball draft. Basketball draft was not too long ago. Football's back in April. For one of the three drafts, which would you rather get drafted by?
Well, now we're showing our age. Baseball, that's a sport you can play for a much longer period of time.
Yeah,
Football, depending on position, you got a very much so an expiration date going on there. And
the Wyndham.
basketball, yeah, again, a guy who's not very tall kind of understood the fact of not fast enough to be a point guard, but can at least make contact and put the ball in play. So hence, yeah, baseball. Plus,
Is, is
it's
there
a
a
chill
team that
sport.
you'd want to play for most?
I am from St. Louis, so I am contractually obligated to say the Cardinals, of course.
Mm,
And, I'm old enough to say that if the St. Louis football Cardinals existed, I'm sure I would have loved an opportunity to play for them. But that is,
wow.
yeah, that was, I saw that with my dad when I was definitely still in the single digits of age. So,
They had the Cardinals and the Rams, and I had football cards for both from back then. Being
nice.
born and raised from Cleveland, I would absolutely want to play for any of the Cleveland teams and be miserable for most of them. At least I would have, Major League in my back pocket is one of my movies. With getting drafted, what's your walkout song gonna be?
Oh, buddy. So if we're going baseball, and I mean, so I do compete in powerlifting, and it's a different type of energy that one wants to walk out to
Right?
for hitting in professional baseball as opposed to hitting or trying to hit a PR on the deadlift. So just taking a quick little, shooting from the hip, I would actually maybe go with High Hopes from Panic at the Disco, not the Sinatra version.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would probably go Queens of the Stone Age, Go with the Flow.
Solid.
Hmm.
I'm going with Kid Rock,
Cocky?
the ba with the ba. And just, oh, I like that one. That was usually for my hit a big squat. That's the song I go with. So I just go. I usually listen to that, or if you can believe it's not really even a song. It's when the All Blacks are doing their Haka
Oh
chant.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, I get one of those renditions, and I would play that and come out there, and that'd be sweet. All right, so Eastern Kentucky, you're a
Hmm.
professor. You're a professor there, and
Hmm.
exercise science. And some of our listeners are athletes and coaches. Some of them actually pursue that line of work. It also dovetails well with being an athlete. So I'm not trying to be rude. I just want to know, hey, what do you do with that degree?
Yeah, no worries. So it's one of those things. The umbrella is massive. So at the end of the day, we're talking about you can go anywhere into performance, which is awesome. Go high end. You can then work with individuals that, I mean, be the person who ends up managing a YMCA, working with folks in just general fitness. And then I tell my students, find your niche. I've know some folks that go with, they personal train golfers, triathletes, individuals of that line. There's some of my students that go on to physical therapy school and use that as kind of obviously the pre-degree before they move on, just like now athletic training is an entry-level master's. So we have a lot of those students doing that as well. Some of them go on to be strength and conditioning coach. A number of them go on to be personal trainers. One or two have actually gone on to be fitness influencers. So I got to tip my hat to them. Hey, that's an interesting world that we can maybe make comments on. But I will simply say you have a lot of options. And the nice thing is you have the underpinnings of how the body works. And if you understand that, it's the good old if you teach them the principles, they can pick the methods. If they only have the methods and they can't necessarily discern what the principles are, so they can apply the wrong method in the situation.
Sure.
So my goal with them is to make sure they have that foundational principles, and then from there they can go figure out the population to apply that into.
Nice. So it gives you a lot of different options. So like the flexibility, but then it also can lead into some things where you could be entrepreneurial, you could be part of a large corporate team, you could be part of a small team. You
Hmm.
could be an individual, or you can work in the team setting where it's like college and football teams. But then it usually takes more letters after your name, being deathly poor for a long time, grunting it out, and then finally getting picked up. And you mentioned your powerlifting, and so solid numbers, and not like in the big boy class. Like when I was at my heaviest, 319 doing strongman and powerlifting,
Dang.
I'm at 250 now, much leaner. But
Hmm.
here you are, 200 and below with a low 500 squat, a mid 300 bench, and a mid 700 deadlift. That's a legit total.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. So
Yeah.
do you still compete or just do it for fun?
Now the competitor in me likes to think I still compete. Unfortunately, the realities of age, I am starting to feel it. The competition I did in November was my best deadlift. Now, mind you, I was 20, I think I weighed in like 208, and I pulled 751, yeah, like a 530 odd squat, and my bench is not great, thanks to unfortunately injuries I've accrued, not due to powerlifting, of all things due to collegiate cheerleading. And so that I only benched I think like 305 for the full pause. It wasn't very impressive.
Were you a flyer as a cheerleader?
Surprisingly enough, given my stature, they I was at the base of the pyramids.
Is that
So
right?
yeah, it's not hard to find a 5'9" and some change, guy. So whenever I was cheering my undergrad, there was four of us that were nearly identical height. So like, like pretty much shoulders straight as a, flat as an arrow. So hence it was like, okay, you guys are the ones that the girls will be standing on. The really tall and really short guy, you're in charge of putting the girl in the air because we're not going to have a cockeyed pyramid. So, and that kind of was the same thing no matter where I ended up cheering after that.
Everyone asks about the inappropriate behavior and the hand placements for being a male cheerleader.
So that's called a chair. And that is where, arm
Yeah.
and then you hold the leg with the other. I never threw a chair as a stunt until I was actually at Kansas in my PhD where I cheered for 1 year. So otherwise, it was, yeah. Well, we do know there's a very frequented corner of the internet of gentlemen that enjoy feet. And so the only thing I did was toss and catch feet. That's it. And then, of course, bodies in general, if they're coming down, not how you want them to. So it was definitely not like that. And the amount of women that have kicked me in the face, it's one of those things that sounds great on paper, and then you get out there, and it was honestly made a lot of great friendships. Still talk with a lot of the guys and some of the gals that I cheered with. But it is for being obviously the sidebar to the football game, to the basketball game, to the even volleyball game, and hockey and other places that have cheerleaders. It's a lot of effort for how much some of those athletes go unrecognized or overlooked. Um, But actually, it's probably a good thing we're overlooked because if you look down at the guy holding the stunt, half the time it's just neck veins and they look like a tomato, while the girl is, smiling, standing up there looking pretty. So,
Yep.
yeah, c'est la vie.
It's a pretty good fraternity party, trick or bar trick when you're out with your friends,
Yes, the
right?
ability to put a human being in the air is something that when it is found out, often people will find you out. And they're like, "Oh, I
Yes.
heard you're a cheerleader." Like, yeah. So it's it was interesting because it was also a way that you could mitigate um, gentlemen being inebriated and then wanting to perhaps resort to violence, because then you would then tell them often, not often, on occasion, perhaps hypothetically, one of the football players would be inebriated and want to start a conflict with one of the male cheerleaders, to which we could just simply tell them, like, okay, there's two ways this ends. One, you beat up a cheerleader. No one's impressed. No one. Two, you lose a fight to a cheerleader, and then you got to go to practice tomorrow and then have to deal with the fact. And the guys that I cheered with, a number of them were guys that were right on the cusp of being D1 gymnasts, but they literally had just had injuries that precluded them from being on that level anymore.
Hmm.
So they're just incredibly athletic guys. And then a number of the other ones were guys that were like pretty good, like could have been like a D3 football player, could have been maybe a D3 wrestler, but they just didn't want to have all that extra time commitments and pressure. So the people I cheered with were incredibly athletic individuals. And feel free to cut this out because this did not involve me. But we
Sure.
show up for a game, and before the game, we all would get dressed in our locker room, and so you're putting on your uniform, you're getting taped up, and that tape is literally just to keep your forearms dry, so the women have something to hold on to when you're tossing them up, and then same thing, you're hitting the brakes and you're bringing it down. And they're like, dude, we could have used it at the bar last night. I'm like, why did you use me at the bar? Like, oh, we got in a fight with a band. I'm like, guys, like at that point, like emo was big in like the early aughts, and like guys, like half those band guys look like they haven't eaten for 2 weeks. Like that's not fair. Like
Right.
I was a normal sized guy on the squad at like 200 pounds, 210 and 5'10. We had two guys that were both named after, because I'm going to refrain from saying it, but like famous singers from previous ages. Um, and so it would be like Paul McCartney was one of the guys' names, and not, but it was one of the like, huh. But they both went about 6'3", 6'4", and a rocked up 240 or more. Like
Dang.
literally, they could bench 400 pounds for reps. They're like, no, 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 no. We didn't get in a fight with like the band playing. We got in a fight with a marching band.
Oh
I
shit.
was like, what?
Why?
Like, yeah, well, so one of the girls in the band thought one of the guys that I cheered with was a very attractive man, which, to be fair, he is. Like, he looked like Mr. Incredible in like the beginning of the first film,
Yeah.
just like super jacked, like giant jaw. Like, nobody wanted to stand next to him because, of course, everyone was getting attention. Instead of, they were going to, we'll call it Paul McCartney because that's kind of close to a name. So, one of the guys in the band did not like that because he thought that was his girl. She, however, disagreed. So he came up and did the, like, quit
Puffed
talking
up
to
his
my
chest.
woman.
Right.
Yeah. And then she's like, I'm not your woman. And then he tried to, it sounded all essentially, it got to the point where the guy took a swing at Paul, which was a horrible choice because Paul was a really good collegiate or high school wrestler and almost did it collegiately. And again, giant, like, jacked guy. And so he, he returned the punch, only his landed, and that guy hit the floor, and the other guys in the band hopped up, and soon ended up being like a melee of a lot of the guys in the band versus like four of the guys in the cheerleading squad. Now, all the guys in the cheerleading squad are fine. They walk out of there, like, they get out of there, whatever. But they're telling me the story. I'm like, man, that's kind of intense. So we go out to the field, and Missouri State football stadium. There's a giant track, and the band sits over here. Now, when the band comes down for halftime, they walk down in sections because that was their thing. Like that's cool. And the amount of stink eyes that the guys in the band were giving us as they walked by, and some of them had obvious shiners, like bruises on their face.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you guys beat the out of the band. Like, I've seen like 10 dudes that are marked. He's like, oh yeah, man, it was, like I said, we could have used you. Like, the problem is like, we're only four of us, and there was a lot of them. It was like fighting lemmings. I'm like, oh my God.
It probably became
So,
cardio at that point.
oh yeah, yeah. And again, these guys were. yes, the physicality of the then marching band versus those guys, that was, yeah, it's
Unfair?
kind of, well, it's that hypothetical, like how many, sixth graders could you take in a fight? And like, well, they found out how many guys they can take in the band at the same time, and it turns out a dozen or more is not enough to stop them. So it was like, yep, these are my friends. I did not get involved in that one. That one did not involve me. I just got to learn about it.
Hypothetically.
Exactly.
All right, so I had a question. This is more personal related.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we have 6 kids. One of them went to IU and was taking a nutrition class.
Hmm.
And the professor comes up and says, "Hey, for they're given the spiel on how food works, and then gives her philosophy on what people should be eating." And our kid competed in collegiate nationals for powerlifting, and it was we had several kids from our gym, but our one daughter competed, and a few went to the Arnold as well.
Nice.
And so she's like, "Hey, I weigh 120. I'm trying to build my squat and everything else. I usually need 120 minimum grams of protein,
Hmm.
150, 160." And the professor just lit her up and said, "Hey, you don't need more than 20 to 40 grams a day, and mostly you should be eating nothing but plants." And she goes, "Well, that's not true. That's not right. I'm trying to get stronger. That's not gonna. I'll be underfed. I won't be able to. That's gonna stunt me." And it was a huge, huge problem in that class in that moment. So she ended up dropping the class and then completely changed her major because she was in nutrition. And I was like, well, shoot. So is there some kind of like pervasive philosophies, that are outside the textbook where you guys do that? And I'm not, it's hard to speak, there's what, hundreds of colleges and universities, and you're not going to speak for all of them. And plus, in every organization, pause, Mark. I just put that back together. So we have a little edit, a piece that I'm going to edit. So Mike, just confirm that there's some sane people out there that'll tell you should eat some protein if you want to get stronger. It's all I need to hear from you.
Um, yes, there's a number of very sane faculty that will say that. Specifically, one of my colleagues that I look up to, he's at Nova. His name is Jose Antonio, and he's actually the director of the program. And I believe he was one of the founding members of the International Society of Sports Nutrition. And he's the guy that did the research that showed you can do up to 4 grams of protein per kilogram of body mass per day and not have any negative effects on bone mineral density in women. And I believe he did a second study that they did that for 2 years
Hmm.
of that high of a protein intake and no negative effects on kidneys and everything else. Unfortunately, you do have some dietitians. This is actually what I encountered when I was doing my master's, where they did the same thing to me. You're going to kill your kidneys because you're taking in too much protein. You're going to blah, blah, blah. And mind you, I was young and very, well, the easy way to call it is a douchebag. But the simple reality is I was a big proponent of, you have to be able to practice what you
Hmm.
preach. So when every single person has demonstrably less muscle mass, is nowhere near as strong, and has lower functionality than me, and is telling me what I should be doing, and then I'm asking, well, how about you do it? And then when you don't get those results, in turn, we'll be good to
Yeah.
go. So unfortunately, I guess they don't like to read anything by Schoenfeld, anything by Pasiakos, anything from, I believe it's, I always mix it up with Morton or Norton when you're looking at like how many grams of protein, how to divide it up throughout the day relative to the body size. And what's really cool is the best, most recent recommendations, which I have not committed to memory yet, are all based upon pounds of lean body
Yeah.
mass. Because that's the problem. Your daughter, I'm going to assume, given that body weight, she probably is relatively
Hmm.
lean. So, there's going to be people that are getting into their fitness journey, getting into powerlifting that are weighing twice as much as her, but probably have the same muscle
Yeah.
mass. So they truly don't need 240 grams of
Nope.
protein and that's where it's useful to, again, base it off of pounds of lean
Yep.
mass. And that's the one where it seems to be, I want to say it's like 1.2 grams of protein per pound of
Lean
actual
mass.
lean
Yep.
mass. But everyone listening, run that down. This is a moment where I'm not too far off, but I might be talking out of the wrong orifice.
Now you'll be all right there. We use in-body scans at the gym, and so we get that lean mass number, and we start programming people off that. Couple things though, our guy Scott Charlin, so my co-host
Yeah.
Lucas out sick. His boss is Scott. We had Scott on, and I said, I always ask, who else should we
Nice.
have on? And he goes, well, you got to have Mike Lane. I go, oh yeah, Mike Lane. I don't know who that is, but yeah, whatever. So episode 81 is our guy Scott, and he said, he's in the powerlifting as well, and you mentioned that, so I wanted to recognize them and thank Scott for that. But I don't know. I think he went. Did he go to West Side with you, or did you go with a different group?
So I went there independently. Nearly the first 4 or 5 times I went there by
Mm,
myself. So the first time was like my journey to the Holy Lands, and I did that in what was the winter of 2007. So drove out there, stayed in like a hotel room that smelled of cigarettes, met Louis at Bob Evans for breakfast, as well as a couple of the other lifters. It was like Phil Harrington was there if I'm gonna like keep dating myself. And then, went to the gym and did a max effort lower session with him. Matt Wenning was there. That's when he and I first met. And, since he's doing his Ludus Magnus thing and doing his other thing, which is great, I've been able to visit him a couple times. And yeah, that was like prime Chuck Vogelpole. There have been two human beings that I've met in person that intimidated me. I was like, I don't want to be near this person. And Chuck is one of them. At that point, he was probably like, I think that's when he was competing as a 275er. He's just rocked up. The guy looked and moved like an angry silverback
mm.
gorilla. Like I just kind of got up against the wall and like I'm not going to make eye contact until it's time to go. And but it was awesome. I was squatting and deadlifting with Louis. Everyone has got a story about him being the nicest guy ever. And like, dude, that's who he is. He's just an incredibly great human being. One of the last times I actually saw him, he played a great prank on me because we got done, working out, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go over to our offices where we've got, all of our books and our shirts and everything else." And this was years after that first visit. And he's like, "So hop in your car and follow me." He gets in his, I think he's driving an Expedition. He of course drove like a giant SUV. Does the equivalent of like pulls out of the spot, drives 50 yards, parks, and gets out. And he just thinks it's the funniest damn thing ever. I'm like,
That's funny. I
got me.
I was late to the game. I didn't start trying to be healthy until about age 37,
Mm,
and then at age 38, opened my gym after doing a year, basically internship and doing all the certifications and learning underneath other folks. So at age 38, opened my gym, and 39, 40 is, 39 is when I actually started lifting. So I was doing mostly just CrossFit, and you lift in CrossFit, but I started focusing more on just
hmm
lifting and met more folks and got stronger. So from 39 to 45, it was just get bigger, get stronger, get bigger, get stronger. And then I added this podcast a couple years ago, but it was maybe 3 years ago. I can't remember when Louis died. Maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe it was right after. It was
It
right after
was,
the Arnold. Maybe in 21.
yeah,
Maybe
I feel like it's
20.
22 because,
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
but it's obviously, yeah.
so every once in a while, I come up with my own little sabbatical, and I'll call up folks and say, "Hey, can I come hang out with you at your gym or your place of business?" And I'm gonna observe, and I'll bring like a book of questions and just try to get better. And so I went to Cleveland, this one gym, and then I came down to see Mickey Marotti at Ohio State, who runs all.
Nice.
And so great resource. Spent a day there and they're doing combine prep. And so then I was going over to Westside because I talked to Tom, who was his partner working with him, and
Yeah, that's right.
Tom's
Yeah.
like, "Hey, come on by," and so generous. And with his time, he stopped what he was doing, pulled out, blank notebook, and just sat down and 100% like focus on all my questions. I was hoping to meet Louis, and he says, "Yeah, Louis sometimes is in and out." Well, he passed away shortly thereafter, a few months later, a couple months later, and he was, I guess, in decline.
hmm
As I set up that sabbatical, I was watching a like clip of Louis on Instagram or wherever, And I saved it and I called my wife downstairs in my office and I'm like, hey, check this out. And we're looking at it. My wife's a nurse. And I go, man, he's not looking so hot. You see the retention in his legs, the water, and she's like, "Oh yeah." And so she starts spitting out whatever his problems could be. And I was like, "I'm like,
Mhm.
shit, I haven't been there. I need to go. Like I've been putting this off like 10 years, you know." And so I show up and I couldn't meet him. Got to see the place and all the reverse hypers and the red squat rack. And Tom was unbelievably generous with his time and knowledge and had him on the show. But having never met him, it's a regret. But the culture between Tom and Louis and everyone else was nothing but of service and giving, from what I could tell. And so it
Mhm.
was it was great. It was great.
Oh, it was an interesting duality in that, mind you, of course, I was a visitor. I was never a West Side athlete. I'm not about false valor,
Right.
like, but it was one of those like you show up, you go as hard as you can, and you leave nothing. You train fucking hard,
Yeah.
period. But you go in there, you put out, and then they go through and they're like the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Like in the moment, it's a bit
Hmm.
intense, but afterwards, like as long as you show that you're there to play, you're not there to occupy space and pretend like you're there. Because so two more, we'll call them quick stories. The second time I ever went there, that would have been spring of '08. And I was there on a Friday afternoon, or yes, or something like that. So I ended up doing the dynamic lower. I'm on a monolift with Amy Weisberger, who's
Legend.
like hands down one of the greatest female powerlifters of all
Yeah.
times, and another one of their lifters. So they got to keep jacking up the monolift for the height because it's like Amy, me, and this other guy. This other guy's like a 275er. Now, Amy is doing speed squats with 315 in chains. I'm doing speed squats with 315 in chains, and I think they're just being nice to me and letting me do the same weight just so that I don't get beat too bad. But then the other guy, he's doing speed squats with 365. So we're X number of sets deep, and like again, if I'm going to show up, I'm going to do as hard as I can. And so I'm going and just keep my head down, just hit my weights, keep my head down, change plates. Nobody's too big time to do that stuff. The other guys in the gym start talking shit on the big guy. And they're going, that dude's in his underwear and he's almost squatted as much as you are. Come on, man, pick it up. And like the dude is just getting more and more pissed off. Like he's just getting redder and just like getting the anger. I'm like, oh,
Here it
me,
comes.
like I don't want to get in a fight today. And he's bigger than me, so like this is going to be a party. Plus, I'm the visitor. One of the other guys then goes, hey, calm down. It's not worth going back to prison this week. And it's just like, that's West Side.
Right.
Like I got through the speed squats. My deadlift numbers are pretty good, so he got even more pissed off when we got there. But it was just entertaining. Like they didn't bother being like, dude, you're squatting the same weight as a woman that literally weighs 50 pounds less than
Yeah.
you. No, no, no. They talk shit on their own.
Right.
And the other one, and that's where I'm like, anytime I go there, I would wear either a plain white T-shirt or like something that has like definitely not wearing another gym stuff. And it was the Arnold weekend. I was out there visiting. I was in there lifting weights with him, and these personal trainers came in to go to Westside. And one of the guys is wearing like a painted on spandex shirt and is obviously like really happy with himself and everything. And he had a bit of an ego to him, which was just
Dumb.
dumb. So Louis, nice guy, going through all the stuff with him. He has a guy who, at that point, I believe was a linebacker for the Vikings, and he puts him on one of those Reebok core tables, and he's like, "Just start churning your feet. I want you to throw the med ball at him. He's going to catch it. And he's going to throw it back to you." So he does that and goes and throws it, and they say, "Okay, now I want you to throw it at him as hard as you can." And so the guy on there is just churning his feet. Dude throws it as hard as he can at the guy. The guy just catches it, and then like boom, like punts it so fast that when the guy puts his hands up to catch it, it goes through his
Mm.
hands and just nails him in the
Break his
nose.
nose.
Like, and I'm profile, so I see the snap back and then the blood starts coming down. And that guy cleared out real fast after getting a nice little taste of humble pie at Westside. It wasn't even malicious. The guy's just like, okay, no, he's going to throw it back at you as hard as you throw it at
Right.
him.
That
And he thought he'd knock the guy off the platform. And
that reflex, that power is a whole different level that guy wasn't expecting.
oh yeah, no, those I mean, that's the thing is not only did he develop incredible athletes, But then obviously he got to the point in that career where then even better athletes are coming to him to get even better than they were before. Like the fact that he turned out that many champions out of Columbus,
Right.
Ohio, kind of like a Charlie
Hmm.
Francis. Like the fact that he turned out that many great sprinters out of, I believe it was Montreal. Like obviously the person can do something with their coaching, their programming, and everything else that other people
Yeah.
don't. And, people say drugs, which was a part of it. I mean, that's obviously part of that culture. But the other part of it is he was doing things that other people weren't in a way that was obviously beneficial. So,
It wasn't just powerlifters, clearly, the sprinters, the fighters, the other athletes, right? And had the principles. A commonality would be obviously the intensity. And one of the equations on our rafters in our gym is intensity equals results. So, like,
mhm.
you can have a great program, great teammate, great equipment, but if you're casual about your sets and reps, you stall out and never advance. One of my friends, he was coaching at my gym and then went down to Louisville and he started Louisville Strongman there. And, he's an older guy like I am, like I'm 15. He's like in his mid 40s. So he does, like, he's strong for him. Like, he's not Brian
Yeah.
Shaw. And so he went to Westside a couple times and he was training with him. And so there's the crew that trains there. And sometimes you get invited to be with the crew if you're good enough. Otherwise, all the
Mhm.
visitors get to train, but there was someone else that's kind of coaching them or working with them. And so their first accessory was reverse hypers. And I don't know how much they had on there, but it was a decent amount. Say it was 50% of his max back squat. And the lady that was coaching him said, "Hey, we're gonna do max reps on all our sets here." And so he did like 20 or 25 reps and then hopped off and got back in line with everybody else. And she just walked over and she goes, "Well, it looked to me like you had a lot more reps in the tank." He goes, "Yeah, well, I figured that's probably enough." She goes, "Well, you're going to go through and you're going to do max reps again, or you can just leave right now and not come back. And so if we tell you to do something, either do it or don't come back." And so he said he did so many reps that when he hopped off, he vomited but caught it in his mouth and then swallowed it back down. And they got back in line because they're doing I don't know how many rounds of go fuck yourself max reps, right?
Mhm.
And he goes, "Okay, got it." So he wasn't going to vomit all over the hyper, and then he wasn't going to be able to make it to the bathroom. So I caught it in my mouth, swallowed it, and then got back in line. Yeah.
Yeah. It West Side. It and of course, I first time I was there was 2000, very late 2007, and last time I visited, I believe, was actually I know I went by I think it was probably the spring of 21, and a number of visits throughout the years, and it's the thing is like if you go there, there's no participation ribbons, and like you either bleed for it or you don't. I mean, the first workout with Louis, I literally got his blood on my shoes because go figure, he popped a massive nosebleed while deadlifting. It dropped on the bar, and then when I was pulling, a little bit fell off the bar and landed on my foot.
Hmm.
So yeah, I really wish I still had that pair of shoes,
COVID,
but
COVID
it's
protocols.
one of those. Oh yeah, yeah. That place was. You probably wanted to make sure you're up to date on your TDAP before you train there. But I mean, that's the thing. It's not. And I think that's also the culture of lifting that I came up from, which is like they are not pretty chromed out, exciting, nice places to be at. Like these are dungeons, these are places that you actually are training. Now, of course, that does pander to a certain personality type and naturally makes it harder for other individuals to have access. And that's where, you know, at the end of the day, if we're talking fitness, damn straight, make it fun. YMCA's, it's like the cheers of bars. Like everybody goes in there and like everybody's happy to be there. But you go to West Side, and during the eras that I saw, and I imagine even beforehand was even more brutal, which is like if you're coming there, like welcome to the jungle. Like you're either here to play or you're gonna get chewed up and spit out. And so I know I didn't want to get a 25-pound plate chucked at me, so I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna go as hard as I can. The weights might not be impressive, but at least I'm gonna know that I put it on the line. Because yeah, we uh we definitely had some fun with doing amount of glued ham raises that like my hamstrings locked up trying to drive home, which was good because my car was a manual, so I just threw it in neutral and then e-braked it because I couldn't really use my legs that well for a couple seconds. But,
I have a
you know,
manual Jeep. One of the main reasons was pretty hard to steal, and my kids can't drive it, so I always have my vehicle around.
nice.
One of the, you mentioned Matt Wenning, and he went on, he he's had great success in a number of different areas. But one of his pieces is the tactical world, and you mentioned that that's a piece that you work on, and it's probably one of your people say niche or niche. I could give a fuck, but it's an area that you dive into. And so here, athlete builder, we want to talk about how do we get people better, and whether it's athletes or not, one of the components is we're working with people that want to do things that are physical: basketball, lacrosse, soccer, boxing, being a cop, special forces, firefighter. Um, those firefighters, they drop out of airplanes in the woods, in the forest and put out, that legit shit, right? So
Oh, yes.
those those kind of folks are every bit, an athlete as someone else. They're using their brain and they're using their body to perform and trying to win. And a lot of times winning can be life and death in the tactical world. So it's one of the main reasons we want to have you on the show, because we haven't gotten into that yet. So broadly, and then funnel it down, how does that piece work with you at the school? How do you, what's your, do you have clientele? Are you, what kind of clientele do you, is it? And talk about building those kind of athletes, because sometimes you're going from no warm up to life and death. It's not like take a 30-minute warm up and do all these things, get your bands out. Um, Talk about that world broadly, and then we'll just get in a little bit deeper, some different tangents.
Yeah, no worries. So, starting off with sports, which is great. We know exactly when insert sports ball team is going to play their next competition. We know the actual minute, second, location. We know the rule set. All of that is given. If you are a firefighter, you simply know your shift goes from this time to this time. You have no real way of knowing, and I guess unless you're a firefighter who's an arsonist, that you don't know when a fire is going to happen. You don't know when a 300-pound person is going to have an event while on the toilet and then capsize in a weird angle, and now you have to physically lift them out and get them into the ambulance and get them to the hospital so they can hopefully live. And so, they truly, yes, nothing is completely unknowable, but they have far less predictive ideas of what else is going to transpire. Same thing when police officers are on their shift. And then, of course, with your military, they at least know when they're deployed. They at least have that and then a basic idea when they're going to be called up. So the nice thing with military is they actually do have an off season. They have here's when they're time, here's when they're on base and deployed. And so you can kind of follow your long-term athletic development. But if you're talking about fire, police, and EMT, those folks have their shifts and have their time off. And then the 2-week vacation per year, that's not going to be sent up in a training camp. That's going to be decompressing from the psychological and physiological demands of the job. So what happened here at Eastern Kentucky University is literally like right over there is the Department of Criminal Justice Training Center. So every single cop in the state of Kentucky outside of Lexington PD, Louisville PD, and Highway Patrol all train over there. That's where they do their annual firearms testing, their defensive tactics training, and that's where they do their cadet training. So when I first got here, I did not know that. I'm from St. Louis. So one day I'm going into my office and I hear the telltale sign of small arms fire. Like I know what a 9mm sounds like. I grew up, I went to St. Louis University for my grad school. We lived downtown. That's not a firework. That's not a firework. So I kind of bolt into my building. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then like looking on the news, like it was like a bank robbery and like there was a big shootout. And they're like, oh, I know, this the shooting range on the other side of
Oh shit!
campus. I'm like,
Didn't
oh,
know that.
know that now. And so over the years, thanks to connections through literally the building I'm in right now is the College of Justice and Safety and Military Science. They've got a great relationship, obviously, with the Department of Criminal Justice Training, because go figure, a number of our students go into law enforcement. And then we also have a fire science, which is actually just further up the road. So we were able to get into contact with their trainers. And currently, I'm working with them in that we're doing some cadet tracking. So tracking their body composition as they go through all their cadet training, as well as they have their what's known as POPs testing standards they have to pass. So we've been giving them kind of feedback and things they can work on with improving the training for them, giving them kind of nutritional advice. Because when I first started here, they had no meals given for any of these cadets. And when you're going through cadet training, you're only making half of what your hourly rate will be when you're a police officer. And at that point, there were literal police officers in Eastern Kentucky that were making less than $10 an hour to be a cop. And
A
so,
little disconnect there. Like, who wants to sign up for that then? Who can afford that?
and that's the thing it's I really like working with those instructors because these were all career officers that this is kind of their retirement job. Like they've done their 20 years on the force, now they want to take what they've learned and pass it on. And so like I really enjoy working with them. And it's interesting because obviously these guys and gals are at the highest standard and they want to make sure that they're minting those cops because you'll have the throwaway joke on occasion, and of like, oh, if they run, I'll just shoot them. Like, hold up, bro. Like, your body is a weapon. Like, that should be the first weapon you think about using. And then you escalate appropriately given the situation. And at the same point, your physicality itself is its own. Can you imagine like the person that got pulled over by Ronnie Coleman back in his
Right?
prime? Like, talk about a massive deterrent. Like,
Right?
you know what?
I'm all right.
I'm sorry.
I did.
Yeah,
I was
and
wrong here.
exactly. Like he's going to, and of course, Ronnie Coleman seems like one of the nicest human beings ever, and like, but just the sheer like, you look at that mass, like he's only not only is he going to run me down, but then I'm just going to get beaten while
Like, go.
tired, which again, that is not good policing, but it's still one of those situations where the physical fitness matters so much because the physical fitness is the basis of all your abilities to make decisions and your ability to then solve physical problems. And so whether you're a firefighter, you're a police, or you're EMT, if you're in better physical condition aerobically and strength wise, go figure the rest of your job becomes a lot easier. And it's one of those that I've really enjoyed getting the opportunity to work with them. And then organically, we have an ROTC regiment on our campus that they effectively kind of knew us from classes and then, I guess being in the gym and they're like, hey, would you mind looking at our program and helping us out? And I was like, yeah, no worries. So we've actually been writing their program and training their ROTC cadets for the past 2 years. And it's great because they've made PRs on all their ACFT, but they've also killed it at what's known as the Mountain Man Challenge, which is they go down to Tennessee and they literally ruck a marathon with a 35-pound pack. And last year we had the best performer overall, and this past year they won a number of awards. And unfortunately, I cannot remember exactly all of them that they did off the top of my head. But it's the fact that with the military, they might have to ruck X amount of miles, and then once they put that gear down, then it's the real force on force situation. And again, no timeouts. No like, hey, we need to hydrate. We need to take a little rest. I didn't get my pre-workout meal in. It's like, no, 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 no. They have to have that base of fitness. So it's nice to be doing something to help individuals that are obviously doing something that is quite selfless. Because exactly, like you can make way more money than being a cop for $10 an hour. And you can obviously do things that are far more safe for a living. That doesn't involve having to deal with individuals that are, in an altered mental state to which is making them violent. And I am just pulling off of my long time ago experience of being around individuals in heavily utilizing methamphetamines in my undergrad. And that is not a fun person to encounter when they happen to be that altered. And of course, they're they're trying to be ready for the worst case scenario. Because if they're not prepared for it, then obviously this can be a literal, like, you don't go home that night. And then on top of that, if you look at the numbers for police and fire, how many of those individuals don't have a very long lifespan after retirement? Yes, it's 20 years to retirement, but if they're neglecting their cardiovascular fitness, they're doing shift work, they've got super high stress hormone, obviously, just due to the nature of it. And that essentially is kind of hyper aging certain systems. And you typically only live as long as your first organ failure outside of the kidney. You can kind of get around that with dialysis for a little while, but when the heart goes kaput, that tends to be the ball game for most humans.
There's the stress from the job, but there's also, they come home, the divorce rate is high, alcoholism is high, drug use can be high. So there's a ton of stressors. Let me ask you this. I don't know how it is everywhere. I know I live in Plainfield, Indiana. I was on the west side of
Hmm.
Indianapolis. police officers, firemen, they go through school, they pass the
Hmm.
academy, they're good to go. Zero physical fitness tests the year after and for the rest of their lives. And so it's a point of contention. And of course, the older guys, they don't want that because the standard has been zero, and then their standards have become closer to zero than they were before, you know, as a limit, as X approaches the limit, right? um,
Hmm.
so down in Kentucky, once the people graduate, is the standards still reinforced year in and year out? They have PT standards, things like that.
And with the police, that is the reality, which is they just have to pass it for graduation. And then after that, it's kind of,
Doesn't matter,
yes,
right?
whatever time may bring. And that's, that is the conversation that I have with those instructors, where obviously, you know, we're kind of getting that echo chamber situation because we agree that, I mean, good Lord, can you imagine how many human beings wish they still had the same physicality they did when they were 22?
Not me,
Like,
because I
it's
came out of college, I was just drinking at that point. So I'm actually better now.
good. And you know what? And there are always exceptions. And at the same point, you look at really any high level athlete, because that's the thing is tactical athletes are
Yeah.
athletes. You know, if I ask a normal person that's not a massive student of the game of football, name me five football players that were still playing of the position other than kicker and quarterback into their
Yeah,
40s.
no. No.
It's one of those things. So hence, it makes sense the 20 years and
Yeah.
out, simply because, and of course, there's certain roles that are far less physical. They can get to the point where they're a detective, and I can see that same thing with a fire. There's a difference if you're operating the truck and then you're the person who's physically going into the
Sure.
building. But it is important to have those standards, just like the military maintains. Of it understands your fitness is not going to be the same as a 30-year-old, as a 40-year-old, as it was when you're a 20-year-old, but we still need to be bringing a baseline level of fitness to the party. And, that was actually said to me from one of our cadre here. And the dude is like an incredible person, and he scares me in the right kind of way. Like the guy was a legit ranger,
Right.
like he's kind of got that look of intensity. He literally is only beaten by two of the cadets in the entire regiment at the 12-mile run, and he is 5'9" and a buck
And how
95.
old is he?
Maxes out the deadlift easy,
Yeah,
40.
see? One of the guys that trains with us, he's nearing the end of his 20 plus as a cop after he already did like I want to say 8 or 9 as a ranger. And so, he's an instructor, et cetera, with the hand-to-hand combat and marksmanship. He's like top of the line, and he's well into his 50s. And it was funny because there's a couple of cops that come over to my house consistently, these two guys. And I ask my kids when they're younger, hey man, which one do you think is tougher? Which one are you more afraid of? And they kept saying the other guy. He said, well, why not Chris? Well, he's just so casual and he's always Mr. Good Time and never really nothing. He's never really like mad and upset. Where the other guy he gets kind of flies off the handle. And I go, yeah, but what about Chris? He goes, no, he's just too nice. And I said, that's because Chris has seen so many horrible things that all these other things don't really faze him anymore. And when he walks into a room, he's not nervous because he's already done all the calculations and made all the decisions and sized everyone up because he has a plan to kill everybody. And they're like, well, I'm like, yeah, he can absolutely destroy everyone in this room without even trying, but he's super nice because he's had enough reps where he has now earned the confidence to be that nice.
Mhm.
When you're training these guys, when you're talking about training, is it I would say my assessment is that it's going to be CrossFit-ish, where they have to build up a base level of strength, do some interval conditioning, but not as much technical overhead squat, muscle ups, toes to bar. They can do some of those things for building your core strength and grip, but CrossFit can be significantly technical. Still builds
Mhm.
athletes and they're well rounded, but I would guess that a watered down version on the technical side, adding some more strongman and carries, where you need to have a bit of endurance of that long, slow distance, not just interval train for 8 minutes. There's that when you're in a fight, but sometimes you're rucking for a while and you got to then keep going for a while after that. And you might only be at 30% or 40% of, exertion level, but you're doing it for 2 hours, right? So when you're training people, talk about the philosophy and how you're going about doing that.
So specifically with the ROTC, because that was the one where like, we have 1 hour, 3 days a week. Here's the equipment we have available. What can we do? I'm like, all right, let's do. So what we did is first we broke them into three different levels. So we have a beginner's program, an intermediate, and an advanced program. And from there, that beginner's program is actually coming into three different iterations. It's based on lower body strength, so hence the deadlift performance, and then until they got rid of it, the overhead ball toss. Upper body strength, so really we're looking at the push-up strength, and then when they did have the knee tucked
Yeah.
elbow, um, and then the conditioning. So what is their 2 mile look like? And so effectively it ends up being 9 different programs. They could be beginner on all three, beginner on one, intermediate on the next, advanced on it. But that way we're getting them to kind of go through in cohorts to which they know what's coming. Now from there, it's a relatively simple kind of plug and play. And then we come in, we do our lower body strength movement. And then when we get to the upper body, we are doing, and it was lower body strength movement with lower body power movement, since at that point the ball throw was still around, but that's gone now, so we don't got to worry about that anymore. From there, we would have a upper body push, upper body pull, just because, yeah, it turns out push-ups are great if you need to get off the ground once, but rowing strength is really good if you ever have to grapple another human
Yep.
being, because you can tie them up and hold on to them. And then an accessory lower body movement, some type of core, and then another accessory movement. Since we were having issues with running injury, we were doing some kind of lower leg stuff like some caldeets, spring ankle series, some tibialis anterior work, things along those lines. And then we finish with conditioning. So 2 of the days are designed to be more zone 2 to zone 3 style work. So it's just a long, continuous effort, having them, do repeats, doing tempo runs, things along those lines. And then one of those days is meant to be a true zone 5. We go hard for 3 minutes, no pacing, you just gut it, minute rest, repeat, and do that for 3 rounds. And we do that with the slide, drag, carry, um, and sprint combo. So we're just trying to build a little of that maximal aerobic capacity with the zone 5 worth, obviously building that general just total work capacity with the zone
Hmm.
2. And we tend to do everything pretty up tempo and then following periodization like most would expect, rep ranges for the everything except for the deadlifting movements, all around 10, give or take. And then when it comes to the true heavy squatting, heavy deadlifting movement, that's when we're talking about really sitting around fives and more of a base strength phase. Because the way that it works for their program is they're kind of like a collegiate athlete. They don't start week 1 of classes, they start week 2. And week 2 is the testing because they have to see where they're at with the ACFT. Or it might get moved back a week or two. Then, we've got the semester. Typically, you lose a week just due to spring break or some other type of thing coming up. And then they do their ACFT post testing literally 2 weeks before the end of the term. So we only have 12 weeks with them. So effectively, it's pretty much straight linear periodization with the deload, usually around spring break or their fall break, and then ramp up again and push again until we peak them out and finish. Because a lot of them, because we do body comp on them as well, go figure, they don't have as much muscle mass as we'd like. Mind you, they're, 18 to 20 something year old individuals. And if we just have more foundational strength and better overall fitness, typically that's going to make everything that much easier to do. And on occasion, we do get true specimens that they're just killing everything. And then we can get to be a little bit more individual programming for them because a number of them lift weights on their own. So, if we only have them for 3 days a week, I know what I'm going to have them do. But like anything else, if we know you have an athlete for a fourth day a week, like, okay, we can add some extra stuff
Sure.
in there. Now we can do some media day arm stuff so we can look cool. We can work on those medial delts so you fill out your uniform a bit better. Like we can have a little bit more fun, not as much of its highest transference as what you'd be looking for, but otherwise it's quite meat and potatoes. Get in, get out, do a dynamic workout where we build in a little bit extra mobility work where they seem to be tight, typically ankles, hip flexors, and hamstrings, and then, kind of let them roll. With the DOCJT, we have not been writing the program. Instead, we're making sure is that obviously we're helping them with decreasing injury risk. So what they have issues with is things like good old plantar fasciitis, shin splints, because these guys are going from running not even a full mile a week to running multiple miles each week, and go figure. That acute to chronic workload ratio just really dings a lot of them up. And their footwear is often quite subpar because due to budgets, they're not even able to give them all high quality running
Sure.
shoes. Instead, it's one of those things that like they have what they have when they show up. Some precincts have a greater budget than others, but that's unfortunately the resources they're dealing with.
Often, not often, sometimes kids don't have a lot of options coming out of high school. So maybe they're looking at college, maybe they're not. Maybe they're looking at firefighter or police officer. And so I'll have some parents contact me and say, "Hey, we don't have much money. That's why we didn't play sports. We don't have much in terms of resources, but my kid needs to be ready physically for some things. We can't afford your gym, blah blah blah. What something economical can we do?" And I say, "Well, if you can get like $100 sled and some weights, I can write you something so that you can push and pull and drag. Like you can build your body with some really basic dumb things where you're just carrying stuff and you're pushing and dragging stuff. I can get you in better shape. I can get your legs and your upper body stronger, but it's not that costly. And
Hmm.
just to build some overall GPP or just that farm boy strength that, for lack of a better word, you just get stronger for just doing manual labor, right? And if you can do that for a while, and then you come and do a program like yours, they're probably going to be decent. They're probably going to be
Hmm.
okay, and you don't have to be that bright to do those exercises. It's not really technical, but you can really build some baseline things there that way. You guys get them on sleds at all, or anything like that, or do any farmers carries or bag carries or sandbag work, things like that?
So actually, that's part of the sprint drag carry. So it's the sleds they use are the nylon ones from Spud, uh, and then
Yeah.
kettlebells is usually what they use for the farmers. And again, just kind of building that up. So that's something that again, it can be easy that we kind of sound like we're an echo chamber, but the reality is the athlete that comes in with better overall work capacity, which really is a combination of better aerobic system and muscles that are more conditioned. So they've got better capillarization, mitochondrial density, toleration of higher lactates because more what are going to be monocarboxylate transporters. Hey, I have a PhD, which is going to allow you to tolerate greater work because one, if you give me an athlete who's in better shape, regardless of the skill I have to teach him, he can do more reps because he can recover faster and he can literally do more high quality work. On the other side is obviously if you happen to be that professional and you're a tactical athlete, you know, I it's not really a joke, but like statistically speaking, there has to be that police officer out there that never once got in an altercation, never once had to pull their service weapon, never once had a bad day. And then there's the other one that they had that bad day and it was literally the day they were right before they retired. And if they're not physically ready for it, then obviously things can go sideways. And then of course there's got to be the police officer that the first day on the force was like a legit black swan event. And so, but the reality is we don't know when any of that is going to be. But if you've got that greater physicality, you know, you do need to make sure that you can go ahead and do these things. And that's what's really hard with the job task analysis. And this becomes this entirely, now let's get political real fast. There will be arguments that we do not want to make it impossible for individuals to be a insert first responder because the standards are too high that they cannot physically pass. However, if you are training these firefighters, these police officers, our goal should be to frame it like, okay, what's the worst case scenario that we have seen individuals do? And then by no means are we saying that like that's what we need to train for, but at least gives us kind of a benchmark. Because you talk about wilderness firefighters, those folks actually have to have a certain level of VO2 max or they do not get to have the job. Because unfortunately, there are situations where the fire is beyond what they can contain. And then at that point, it's called who runs faster, or who has the wherewithal and still has the physical bandwidth to be like, oh, I should probably create a situation here where I can just hunker down underneath, the flame retardant blankets and just hope that I'm going to be okay. And there's, case studies where unfortunately they found the wilderness firefighters still like running, their chainsaw was on them, and they had ran X amount of distance to try to outrun the fire that was coming. And, part of that is the skill side, because they obviously physically strong enough to carry it, but if they would have had perhaps a little bit more cognitive bandwidth, because of course, when anyone panics, they make less than optimal
Right.
decisions. Like that's just unfortunately part of it. And actually, one anecdote that was freaking hilarious now, but it was scary as hell at the time, is a couple of years ago, me and one of my fellow faculty member, when we were first starting to do this research endeavor, and I'm still hoping to do the research, we got to see them do simulated pullovers. And the simulated pullovers, where you have the cadet, they pull over the car in front of them. There was a condition where literally the person just came out of the vehicle and started shooting at them. And it's a simunition, but it's real guns that are effectively firing paintballs that hurt way more than a normal paintball. And we got to see only like four of them. And what really stood out in my mind, and this is anecdote, which is not good science, kids at home, is the two officers that were physically in better condition, the male and female cadet that I saw, managed to keep themselves calmer and make better decisions. The one that kind of looked like Gomer Pyle, I literally saw him. He was hiding behind his car doing this with a gun while screaming, "I will effing you." And like, we're wearing a helmet to keep us safe, and otherwise it's cold, so I'm wearing a jacket. But I'm turning sideways so I have less of a target to hit. And like afterwards, the instructor is like, "Hey man, it's okay to get scared, but you can't yell 'I'm going to effing kill you' at a perpetrator. Like that's really bad if you're in a legal situation." And no nonsense. That cop who physically did not look very capable, and this is me running with stereotypes. I want to do the research and see if it shows that physicality and things like VO2 max and otherwise gives you greater bandwidth ability. Literally, I didn't say that, and like
Probably didn't remember it because he blacked out a little.
because he was in that situation black. You can look at Dave Grossman's work of like on combat, on killing, which is a good primer there. But it's one of those situations where if you have more physical tools and you have all the training behind it, that's where a guy like that instructor at EKU scares me. And I'm glad he's on our side because he's a person that has not just incredible training, but has the physicality
You know,
to boot. Like,
I would say that the two cadets that were physically more stout, you would make the jump that they have done hard reps. They have done a heavy squat or heavy deadlift or bench or some heavy work where there's some pain, discomfort, intensity, and they came out okay and they lived and they were fine. So they're going to probably build some confidence on handling adversity. So here's
mm-hmm,
another adverse situation. Might not be as freaked out because they've had X number of other adverse situations and then came out okay. You might be able to draw a correlation there. And it's interesting you said, like, getting into an altercation on day one. Um, I'm No Angel is a book by Jay Dobbins. And
mm-hmm,
I forget, he has a sequel to it. I don't know if you heard of him. He played Pac-10 football almost. He went to combine receiver, thought he was hot stuff. He meets these guys that were from these low rent schools never heard of. And he's like, hey, I'm probably getting drafted today. These guys, I haven't even heard of these guys' schools. Well, one was Andre Reed, the other one was Jerry Rice. So he did not get drafted, and so he goes into law enforcement, and then he quickly goes into he goes to all the training, goes um, eventually into undercover, uh, and he infiltrates the Hell's Angels. That's why he says the book is I'm No Angel. He actually becomes a
mm,
patched full blood member. But as a newly minted cop, day two, he's approaching a car, and a guy pulls out a gun and shoots him, and it goes right through like where his oblique is, and it comes out, and he ends up living. Like, but day two, he got shot.
mm-hmm,
So like shit happens, you gotta be ready to go. Let me ask you
yeah,
this. So these people are in these high stress situations as a career,
mm-hmm,
and the physical requirements go away once they're off and running.
Hmm.
Do you take time because these kids are young, and we like again we have six, and I think our oldest is 25, 6 years old. Um, as a coach or a parent or a leader, there's the instruction hat you wear, there's the therapist hat you wear, there's a listener, there's a friend hat you wear, there's the priest hat you wear, but sometimes you're called to like inspire and motivate, not to say here's what we're doing, here's why, or hey, just get going because I said so. Um, hey, you're gonna leave here and your standards are gonna go down because no one's holding you to them. Do you guys take some time to say, hey, like formulate a plan? Here's a roadmap for success for the next 20 years. To give yourself a shot of staying alive and kind of like inspire them and to put together some kind of their own plan because they're not going to be held to the push-up standard in the 2 mile run. They got to just decide that they're going to be capable, and then it gives them a better shot mentally and physically of handling it.
So that is something that especially their head instructor really tries to
Sure.
instill in them. And, because that's the thing is all these guys are the career guys. So not only did they see what happened to the guys that didn't maintain their physical fitness during their career, both, negative events whenever they happen to be an officer, but then also how some of them retired and literally died of a heart attack 4 years
Yeah.
later. So, it's the twofold, not just the importance of the training to make you a better officer, but also the nutrition component in order to help mitigate some of the negative effects on the cardiovascular system from being under all of that stress. And then not to mention again the issues with sleep and everything else that can come with it. So it's something that's obviously very much so there. And so there's a lot of advocacy for find the gym you like or find the type of training you
Mm.
like. Obviously, with the popularity of jujitsu, it's very much so like you should get in that. It's combative training. It's really hard
Yeah.
conditioning. It obviously has a strength component. You know, Obviously CrossFit is something that has been very popular in the military and other groups because again, it gives them
Well,
something
outlet.
to bingo, and that it's still it's challenging, it's novel, and everything else. Like it's easy to disparage CrossFit for a variety of reasons, from the pretentiousness of people that aren't good
Yeah.
at it to the random nature of it, but it has done such a phenomenal job of getting a lot more people exposed to weightlifting, getting a lot more people exposed to movements aside from just trying to look pretty in the bodybuilding sense. That there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that, but having a greater just giving people a wider variety of fitness options, and for lack of a better term, it's it seems to have done a lot of good things for increasing and normalizing women with muscle and getting a lot of women to train in ways that I don't remember being at relatively large universities and being in gyms since the early aughts. And like, it seemed like, and the cardio is for the women and the weights are for the men, and never the two shall meet. Because if you're a man doing cardio, you're not a man. The toxic
Yeah.
bullshit. So, the good old power lifter, like, what's your warm up? I walk up to the bar.
Yeah. Right.
It's one
I
of those
move the I
things
move the
of
weights to put on the bar.
exactly. I do sets of 10 on occasion. That's my cardio. So
Bad
it's
jokes.
indeed, I'm full of them. So giving them whatever they're going to enjoy for fitness, but understanding that effectively there's, it's three pillars. You've got the strength component, which then powers a natural expression of it. You've got the conditioning component, because if I'm in better aerobic shape, the anaerobic is going to come as well. And then something mobility, to make sure you're not getting locked up from wearing your duty belt and being stuck in a
Car.
car ride for X amount of hours every single day. And then you get up, you run, and you get shot by the
Yeah.
sniper. Proverbial sniper. Let me make sure that I'm not going to meetings. Um, and so it's one of those situations where, as long as they found something, so if you're doing jujitsu, congratulations, your mobility, because you're going to be challenged in some rough positions, so that's going to happen. Your conditioning component is there, especially if you're really drilling for a while. And then strength, you're doing a pretty good job of getting the big parts there. I mean, of course, getting under a barbell is nice because it's quantifiable, and also it's not fighting you well actively when you're
Right.
doing it. So, unless you're using one of those tsunami bars or a shake weight, for the most part, bar tends to not move too much.
You know, I've done CrossFit and powerlifting and strongman, and I could poke fun and holes in all three for sure. There's like I really like strongman, but that continental clean where you clean the bar up on your belly and you lean back and that huge arch, like there's so much dumb shit in there, right? The lack of how there's 30 different federations in powerlifting for three fucking movements. It's squat, bench, and deadlift. Well, it is and it isn't, right? It's, so, and then CrossFit does a bunch of silly things, but all the three of those endeavors have outstanding applications for people. And so it's, but you can do a bunch of dumb shit with a pool cue, right? So, it's meant for playing pool. So if you use the tools correctly, you're gonna be just fine. Uh,
Hmm.
well, I'm really enjoying the show and what's going on here. A lot of things we can get into, and we already got into quite a bit. Just to be respectful, I know you're still training and all. Are you 5-3-1? Are you conjugate? Are you whatever feels good that day? Or is it like, 40s? I'm in my 40s. I don't know if you're married with kids or what. I got 30 minutes. I'm gonna go do this. So, what's your training like now?
So it's like anything else that's developed over a long period of time. And right now, after my last meet, it's essentially been kind of a bodybuilding. It's kind of a volume progression, a bunch of sets of 10, and then I rode that out for about 3, 4 months. And now I'm getting back into working more in fives. And so really what I am doing is kind of my own modified version of the five three
Yeah,
one. Only instead of going down and doing the true fives week, threes week, and then the 5-3-1 week, I'm literally just running fives.
gotcha.
So, kind of having that basically in your periodization. My accessory work is all based around volume, so sets of 10 or more, depending on the exercises, and trying to shore up some weaknesses because my current training goal of I told myself I was going to peak for this meet, and then I was going to try to be a bodybuilder for the next year or so. So, hence the higher repetition range, but the siren call of a heavy barbell is something that I cannot turn my back on
Sure.
yet. So, hence, starting to handle some heavier loads and they're feeling, decent, but at the same point, I'm far from true meat
Yeah, yeah,
prep. So,
yeah.
yeah. And I really like I run it just a simple upper lower split. And then I do have a vanity arm day and then have a final day of the week where it's kind of a total body, just because I am an individual that is very awkwardly built, and so turns out I hear quads are nice, and I want to build them at some point. And I hear you also need to have big arms if you're going to do a bodybuilding show. You can't just be a potato with sticks. So that's my total body day is close grip work, a little bit more arm farm, and yeah.
So my other counterpart, Lucas, I played D3 football and for his size, like he's small, 5'7", 5'9", running back, but uh, at 190, he's a 500 plus squatter. So
Nice.
he's been to the Arnold for Olympic lifting. He's been to collegiate nationals for powerlifting. He's been to both in the same few months as he finished up his college career. So, excellent at lifting and mechanics are great, powerful and strong. And then decided he wanted to try bodybuilding for a year like you did.
Hmm.
And he had a coach, and the coach, had him lifting, and he was doing fine there, and learned how posing goes, and but handled all his nutrition. And Lucas, if anything, if you give him a roadmap, he's very systematic. Just tell me which
Hmm.
boxes to check. So robotic, which is so fun
Hmm.
to coach, no pushback. And so he dieted all the way down that he needed to be and won a bunch of shit as a first timer. And these people kept coming up to him because since he had been a lifter, like yourself, for so long, most of those bodybuilders were not major lifters. It turns out they were just doing a lot of hypertrophy and big reps for size. Well, Lucas had done power and strength, a lot of strength. So those muscle bellies, hamstrings were big when he dieted all the way down. The others didn't have. You're like, how did you get
Hmm.
your muscle bellies that dense? He's like, I don't know. I guess I squatted 500 when I was 185 pounds. I guess that, kind of helped. So I imagine if you stick with bodybuilding and all and diet it all the way down, you'll be just fine. What do you listen to when you train?
So it very much so comes down to the type of
Mm,
day. So for right now, because I'm trying to keep a foot on the brake pedal and not go hard on the gas pedal. So it's usually a combination of, metal, punk rock, a little bit of synthwave and things along those lines. The other night I was listening to, I believe the album's called The Shape by Dance with the Dead, which is good, yeah. And it makes you think you're like watching like a 1980s movie for like action movie with like the montage going in the background, like it's kind of like nice like that. Um, and then, obviously when things are a little bit more escalated, that's when we go to I don't think you ever really can go wrong with Overkill by Motorhead. I feel like that name is appropriate, or the title is appropriate for it. And recently, a friend of mine introduced me to Electric Callboy, and their song "We Got the Moves" is definitely what I believe the youths would refer to as
All
fire.
right.
And it's definitely something that I mean, you got to listen to the music loud enough that you feel it with your soul. Like it's not something like easy listening, but that has been on the rotation when I need to go to a dark place. And then I've got one or two more that are kind of ace cards when you need them. But it's one of those things like, if the song loses its power if you use it too much type deal. So you gotta choose when to pick
The
it.
law
But
of
I would
diminishing returns.
exactly. But there is something to be said about the quasi conditioning of, you condition yourself that when you hear that song, that's when you go full
The
bore.
switch is
And
flipped.
so
Yep.
bingo. And so for me, the We Got the Moves was one of them. And the other was, to my, I guess, undying shame. It's a hardcore remix of a song from the children's anime My Hero Academia.
Nope.
It's Jet Set Run hardstyle. And yeah, that's that was the third attempt deadlift. Like
Let it rip.
let's just roll it, man. Exactly.
If you're watching the end of the first Rocky movie, the first round or two are being played out, and then they go into the montage where they start skipping through the rounds pretty quickly. But it leads off of
Hmm.
that song, and the song starts with a bell, like a ringside bell. And if you hear that one
Hmm.
hit, for the longest time, I set that as my alarm. So when I woke up in
Nice.
the morning, it's like boom, and you're like, oh shit, let's go. So there's a few songs where that first few notes flip something in your head, and it's like, all right, it's time to start cooking. You have a bucket list adventure you want to try?
So I enjoy hiking a
Yeah, me
lot,
too.
and so one of the things that I've wanted to do is, and this is way out there, which is a guy did it, cross country skied across all of Antarctica
Nope,
unsupported.
I'm
And
good.
I just, oh man, there's just something about being in the cold, by yourself.
It,
It's talk about like brings you to the moment, has you fully, aware, and your mind cannot deviate because otherwise, you might die. So you're definitely like there. And so, yeah, that's definitely something I'd love to do.
favorite sports movie? I got like 20, so
As much as, oh yeah, no, I mean, if you say by sport, then we can get granular. Because of course, all the Rocky sports documentaries are great, and I can't. I mean, we just don't talk about five. And
no one does.
so,
Everyone hates it.
indeed, but I really liked Invincible as much as I didn't want
Hmm.
to. Like the Marky Mark Philadelphia Eagles
It was
film,
excellent.
like that one. Yeah, that one is really
Vince
good. Of course, everyone's going to say Vision Quest at some
Vince
point.
Papali.
Yes, thank you.
About a month
Um,
ago, I was in your
but
town, St. Louis, for the first time, and went
nice.
up the arch. That was cool. It was neat. My wife and I were there. She had been there before, and went by the Cardinal Stadium, and of course there's Mecca where there's all the beer just flowing of Budweiser and Busch and everything else. But
Hmm.
anyways, one of my colleagues who had been on my show, she's a professor at Missouri, and she and her teammates run a couple Parisi speed school gyms, and they're
Hmm.
running a combine test. And she was also presenting at my summit I had in June. So she asked me to come out there and help with the combine. It wasn't far. I wanted to go to St. Louis. I wanted to go up in the arch. I like hiking as well. So my wife and I, we like to do the national park things, get those stupid fucking stamps. Anyways, we go and we help out with Dr. Como and with the combine. They really didn't need us for anything, right? But the test was for U.S. A bobsledding. So
Hmm.
bobsled, skeleton, and luge. And so they're just looking for
Hmm.
straight ahead power, just an ox or running with the bulls. And what do you have? Nothing lateral. No one gave a shit. No 5-10-5. And so, like your Vince Papali story, they had about 10 people there. My wife and I, we see him warming up, and she just points over at these two guys, and she's just like, athlete. That's an athlete right there. They're light, they're bouncing, like things are moving quick, like all the A skips, like everything's like athlete. And then you got people that, swear to God, my age,
Hmm.
35, 40, 45, 50, not lean, fumbling through the warm ups. And we're like, oh no, oh no, oh no. So the only real negative of the testing, like they had turf and everything was good, but they didn't have a good 40 venue. There wasn't a track they could use. There wasn't a turf. So they're outside in concrete at a slight incline. And we're like, oh shit. And
Hmm.
they had the lasers, the timers, and the athletes that ran were like, shit, all right, one guy was pretty good. Um, you know, low fives. Okay. The other guy was just 1 year out of Iowa State, ran track at a slight incline. I watched the gates go off. 428, just hauling ass. Like each step looked painful because you're just churning through. He didn't even breathe. Face was all contorted. Like this specimen is running right through. And then the other 6 or 8 guys, the first guy that ran pulled up lame with his hamstring on the first attempt. Another guy on a second attempt kind of fumbled and then knocked a gate over. Fuck. And all
Hmm.
the other guys had problems with their ankle, Achilles, or hamstrings by the end of running their 340s. They're testing their fly 10 and their 40. But they all continued with the broad jump, the vertical, the sled push. And I'm like, stop, stop. You're going to be so hurt. You're going to tear something and be out. Now, Mr. 428, just standing a vertical 39. I'm like, I'm like, oh, that's gross. And so, anyways, I get your Vince Papali story. Favorite sport to watch?
Whatever athletes I'm coaching.
Okay. Do you
So
have
right now, I'm literally working with a guy who plays pickleball
no?
professionally.
That's
So
not that.
I
No,
enjoy.
that's a drinking game. And I played
Hey,
racquetball in college, so it's not like I'm on some high horse here, right? Like, okay, it's a wiffle ball.
hey, he's doing it. He's making it happen, and he's such a nice guy. Like, can't say enough positive things about him. I'm not gonna call the name out, but if he comes across this, he'll hopefully get a chuckle because I mean, the dude is legit.
I play pickleball.
And
Pickleball's
so,
fun. I got a
yeah.
beer in one hand and I'm swinging my racket with the other. You know, that's fine. You got a good book for us? This is my wife's favorite question.
Ooh, now the question is, do we have a genre?
I'll say one fiction and one nonfiction. That's pretty
Okay,
broad,
so if we're
pretty
gonna
broad, but
go,
yeah.
I like it. If we are going to go with fiction to start off with, and I'll go with fantasy, Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy. So you start off with the first one, Mistborn. It's, for lack of a better term, it's a fantasy heist novel, and like it just builds from there. Like it's awesome. He has one of the most interesting creative minds I've come across. One of my friends got me into it, and that was like the gateway drug into his larger universe, refers to as the Cosmere, and hands down, like it's either that or I'd have you go with Leviathan Wakes by James S. A. Corey, Covey, Corey. Um, but that's what is the basis for the Expanse TV show on Amazon. Like just awesome, awesome, awesome. And then when it comes to nonfiction, and I realize now I'm sucking at this because I'm giving you two options. Mary Roach is probably one of the most entertaining science writers you'll ever come across, and I'd have you start off with Grunt that is literally about the science of research of literal people in the military, the things they look into. And if you're, I would have your audience look up deck slap and learn about the terrifying nature of the ship exploding underneath you and hitting the bottom of your foot so hard it powderizes your feet, and then you typically have to get amputation because you can't put those bones back together, and you also lose the fat pad on the bottom of the foot. Master Commander, the movie, actually shows it with Russell Crowe, what deck slap looks
That's a
like,
real thing.
because the deck literally hits him so hard it powderizes it. The bones of the foot break so badly, and you slough off often the fat pad on the bottom of the foot, that the only thing you can really do is amputate. You can't actually rehab, but it has a lot of more interesting stuff. And then
That's
anything
the title of
by
the book, Deck Slap.
no Grunt is the book by Mary Roach, and then it has that is one of the subset chapters. There are other ones that are just endlessly fascinating. And anything by John Krakauer, but specifically, I would say Where Men Win Glory, because it's the story of Pat Tillman with the story of Afghanistan from the Russians leaving, and then the Taliban taking power, all the way into effectively what would end up being, the untimely demise by friendly fire of Pat Tillman.
Dang, I didn't know Krakauer wrote about Tillman. I read Into Thin Air, and that's
Yes.
horrible. I like the
Oh
story,
yeah.
but those people that life is bad up there, and he wrote about it. Um, Fiction for me, it's Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand.
Oh yeah,
That's
man. That is a talk about a
It's an investment. I read it once. I've listened to it twice. And I like The Fountainhead as well. A precursor, but they're not related books, but they are related.
mhm.
Those are probably my favorite fiction ones.
Well, that's what happens when you don't follow an architect's
Oh
instructions.
man, Howard Rourke. So this could be a real life person or fictional.
hmm
Favorite superhero?
The Max.
Who's that?
The Max is I believe I want to say it's Sam Keith, but he's a homeless man who lives in a cardboard box.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up. How about villain?
Yeah.
Again, could be a real life person, could be fictional.
Anton Chigurh.
Who's that?
He is the villain from No Country
Oh
for
yeah,
Old Men.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I liked him. You have to call it with the coin flip. What a lunatic!
Oh, just such a
What matters?
there. The line
What's
that I heard,
riding on it? Everything.
the line that I heard about someone's favorite villain can often be like, "What's the dark side of their
Yeah.
personality?" And there's just something about you can't borrow, you can't beg, plead, borrow. He's going to do exactly what he said he's going
Yes.
to do, and that type of like, yeah, there's just something about it that's just interesting and obviously
For
terrifying.
me, on film, it would be like Hannibal Lecter. Same
Hmm.
deal. I like the Joker and Dark Knight. As a kid, you like Darth Vader because he's, you know, awesome.
hmm
How about what's your favorite lift?
So honestly, I just really love doing pull-ups. That's probably my favorite lift. But for the ego, it's going to be
Okay.
deadlifting.
Um, yeah, quote for us.
Ooh, what is better, to be born good or to overcome your evil nature through effort? Which is Parthurax from the video game Skyrim.
I would say that the latter. I'd rather be born with challenges and then you overcome them because you worked.
Exactly,
Yeah, for
exactly.
sure. Where can people find you?
So I'm a faculty member at Eastern Kentucky University, so they can, look me up on the website, shoot me an email if they got questions about programs or anything like that. I'm more than happy to help out there. And then I do some coaching with Rapid Health Optimization, which is a lot of fun. That's how I get to work with that pickleballer and a couple other high-level athletes and otherwise. I do have an Instagram that I post very rarely on because I am not a super private person. I'm just not someone that's very social media savvy. So I think it's better to just, it's the good old, it's better for people to think you're stupid and keep your mouth shut than to open
Mm,
it and remove any
that's right.
doubt. So, but yeah, that's probably going to be the best avenues of trying to reach out and contact if they have
Cool.
questions.
If anybody wants to get a hold of us, website athlete-builder.com. You want to email us and we get those with questions for us or for prior guests, info at athlete-builder.com. Hey, Mike, man, great having you on. Enjoyed it, learned some things, and I just had a good time today. It's just like sitting back at the bar hanging out, so I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank
See
you
ya.
again. Bye bye.